done, I used the service manual. Somewhere in here there's a nice wiring diagram, this one right here, which shows all the pins. I don't know if it's going to focus or not, but it shows all the pins and where they go. So my process is to take this service manual and go through every single pin of the three main plug pins that go into the ECU and track them to where they're supposed to go. Now, this was an already assembled 300ZX wire harness, so I wasn't really concerned about wiring errors like I would be if I built it from scratch, but I also want to make sure there's no wire integrity issues because it is an old harness, so you never know, maybe something rubbed through or something shorted out or whatever. Plus I had to terminate, I put new terminals on the ends. I want to make sure they were all adequately secure. The only modifications, I think I've said this before, were to add this plug on start B plus and to the pump. That's a pump out. This plugs in, this mates with the body harness that's in a 280Z, so that just plugs right in and gives it everything it needs. They added a relay, that's the pump relay. On the 300ZX, that's a separate wire harness that goes, this harness plugs into a much bigger plug and then that goes somewhere else, and it's all that. So I integrated that relay into the harness. Come on down, you see I've got the shorting plugs. This is for the resistor pack in case you're running low impedance injectors. They won't hurt the ECU that way. This is the knock sensor. The one thing you have to be careful on this is, now this is set up for one of those round donut style knock sensors, which I don't think is correct, but it's the only thing I have right now. One side is ground, one side is hot. If you plug it in the wrong way, it won't work and it'll give you an error code. But I think I've got the wiring right, so you know it should work. You could just have one wire go into it and disconnect the ground, then it's either going to be connected to the knock sensor or not. Because the donut sensor has two leads. One of the leads is a ground lead, one lead's a hot lead, but the body of the thing is grounded as well, so it's like redundant. I hope that makes sense. You've got the battery. These are the fuse links to the battery. That's the EFI relay. This is nothing. I'll explain what that's for in a few minutes. The harness comes, now this is outside of the firewall plug. You're on the outside, you're in the engine bay now. Okay. Here's a bunch of grounds. For testing purposes, I hooked them all to one ground lead, so pretend this is the engine block. I have one extra ground here. This is actually connected to ground. It doesn't need to be connected to the ground. This is actually a ground lead from one of the sensors that's not used on the L28. So I kept that just in case I wanted to incorporate that into my ignition module. These are the ignition module leads. So all these could go into making the ignition module work. What we have here. I attempted to tag all these things. This says, this is the 3 leads. What is this? Pump, ground. I don't know what the heck this is. Oh, this is the O2 sensor. I should have made that clear. I don't know why you can't see that on here. Oh, O2 right there. Okay. O2 sensor. Okay. GPS. I marked what it is and what pins it connects to. This is a cylinder head temperature sensor. For that, I could plug this in and essentially make an extension cord and run another termination to this side and plug it into the one that's on the other side of the cylinder head. So that's how I got around. This is too long. This is too short to reach all the way around to where the stock turbo cylinder head temperature sensor is located, which is on the side of the head on the spark plug side, as opposed to plugs into the thermostat. So rather than trying to make it super long like I did on my test lead, I just made it normal length for a thermostat plug. And then if I want to use the other side of the engine cylinder head, I can make an extension plug that in and take it over to there. So that was the idea behind that. Again, this harness was designed to be as minimalistic as possible, unlike the test harness, which was designed for two different ECUs. That's the AAR, fuel temp sensor, the crank angle sensor. What is this? Oh, now we're into the injectors. So these are all 6 of the injectors, and I labeled them both with the pin they belong to as well as what injector they go to. So for instance, injector 1 is pin 101. Injector 5, which is the next firing order on the L28, is pin 102. Injector 3 is pin 103. That lines up. So I've got them marked up with the pin they relate to as well as a firing order injector number for the L28. It's not a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4 on the L28. So you have to mix those up a little bit. But I've got it either way. So if you're not sure which, you can just, if you know what the pin is or you know what the injector is, you can figure it out with that labeling. This is the map. This is the only thing I left alone completely. It's pretty beat up. I'm going to need to get a new head for it, but it's super long right now. And I didn't want to cut it down because I don't know exactly where I'm going to be mounting the map. There's some people who run them outside. You know, you can take the map and mount it outside the core support and put the air filter, well, that stuff way up there, and just run a lot of tubing all the way back to the turbo. You can do it that way. So in that case, you might want it extra long. But when the final fitment of the location of the map is done, at that point I can come back and cut it down and put a new head on it. Here's your wires you need for ignition. There's a low side of the coil. There's a signal side that triggers the base of the transistor that fires it. That purple one isn't really part of the ignition. It's actually part of the speed sensor. That's the one that's part of the self-cleaning mode on the MAF. What I think I'll do on that, I think I got a pretty good idea on that one. The L28, the 280Z has something called a boost, something controlled deceleration device. I can't remember what it's called. But what it does is essentially it tells it operates a solenoid on the intake manifold that's totally not used on the turbo. And that solenoid is triggered every time it goes below 10 miles an hour or it goes above 10 miles an hour. I can't remember which way it is. But it basically turns on and off around a 10 mile an hour speed zone. So what I'm thinking is I'll hook it up to a relay so that relay will click on and off whenever you go over 10, under 10, over 10, under 10. And hopefully that will trigger enough times to activate the self-cleaning mode. So I'll just put that purple conductor onto a switch into the switch side of the relay, grounding out that purple lead every time you go under 10 miles or over 10 miles, and maybe that'll be enough to trigger the self-cleaning mode. The good thing about that is it only triggers self-cleaning mode if you go out and drive the car some, which is kind of like the idea. This is that negative lead I was talking about, an extra negative lead that I'm going to use for maybe to ground out the ignition coil. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. Let's see, or I should say the module that triggers the ignition coil. And coming on around, and we're back to the EFI relay and the battery. So to test everything, like I said, I go through the book. I hook up these test probes and put a tiny little fine piece of wire so as not to spread the contacts on these. And I go through, just do a continuity test everywhere. I'm not going to do it on camera now, but what I also did in order to validate all the relays are working properly was I hooked up power to the battery and to that switch right there, and I made sure that when I energized the on, that the EFI relay came on, and based on shorting out I think it's a lead here. I don't know if it's 9 or 5, or not 5. I think it might be 9. But if you ground out a lead here, it clicks to EFI. If you ground out, I think it's number 108 here, it turns on the pump. And I did both those tests and made sure that that relays were working and that they were sending signals where they should have been. So either the pump output came on, or the AAR came on, or the O2 sensor came on. Those are the only modifications to the harness, was to deal with the power supply to the AAR, the pump, and the O2 sensor, because again, those things were handled by a separate harness originally. It wasn't built into this EFI harness, so that was the only modifications you need to make. Everything else, like I said, just is wired up just fine. So it's just me verifying it. But anyway, that's it for now. The next part of the process will be to go out and install it and give it a whirl. And I might do that later today. It's pretty hot. I may not. I don't know. We'll see. But I don't anticipate any issues. I'm hoping it works well. And I'll go ahead and put the resistor pack on there. I feel more comfortable putting resistors in, because that way I don't have to guess what the ECU does with the injectors. And I'm pretty sure it won't matter. I have a feeling that even if you used high impedance injectors and resistors, I don't think it'll affect the firing, frankly. It's only 6 ohms. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, I'll find out. I'll try to do some more research to know for sure. The biggest problem I have is, how do you know for sure what the fuel injector impedance is to line up with a specific computer ECU? And you can base it on model years, maybe look up the injector that's recommended and do some research. I don't know. That's the kind of a little bit of a query that I don't have a good answer for. Anyway, that's all for now. I'll bring you back next time I have it hooked up the engine and we're ready to do a test run. Thanks for watching. Bye.